She's actually done the EAT program as well. She sat in on it to see what it was that I teach, because so often she's working with clients and one of the big pieces that's missing is what they're eating, right? Because even then, you can only give people pills and powders and potions and do witchy magic on them so much. I'm just kidding. But if you still have to clean up your nutrition. But what has happened is, even with me, with as clean as I eat, I've still run into hormonal issues. It's just kind of what happens as we get older. I've been really honest with you guys about the fact that I've run my life at the speed of light, and some things have gone down in my world that really took me out at the knees, and it's really impacted me hormonally. And I'm still recovering from the tailspin of that, and I had to take a lot of responsibility for my lifestyle to clean that up. So it wasn't just about Nari saying, okay, we'll take these pills. I had to slow down my schedule. I had to stop working so much. I had to take a really honest inventory about when I was going to bed, when I was getting up, how often I was seeing clients, how often I was feeling anxious, right? I had to kind of find my inner zen, which ebbs and flows still. You guys know I've had to dial back the intensity of my workout. So I invited her in because adrenal fatigue is a real thing, and we fight against it as we get older. So we're trying to lose weight, and we turn up the intensity on our lives that are already busy, which actually exacerbates the problem. So she's going to talk about kind of hormonal health, how that impacts you in terms of losing weight and just how you're feeling. And then you guys can bombard her with questions and pick her brain, right? And she's the mom of 2 young boys as well. So she's like, she's in it.
And a girl.
And a girl. You got 3?
I got 3. Yeah.
You have 3?
Yeah.
Just 3. You have 3. How did I not know that? Yeah. Anyway, so I'll give her the floor, and we're going to videotape it. So if you need to go back and listen to it again, you can. So, Dr. Pidutti.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Thank you, Lisa, for giving me the chance to talk about something that I talk about in my practice all the time. So I was just going to start with my story of adrenal fatigue, which is basically started when I went to naturopathic medical school. I was in a 4-year naturopathic medical degree program, and then I had to do a 3-year, or I chose to do a 3-year acupuncture degree at the same time, a Master's of Science in Acupuncture, which I combined in 5 years, and then I worked on the weekend. And I was often in class from 8 in the morning till 10 at night, and this was for 5 years. It was on and on. And then after I graduated, I didn't stop and recover. No, I had 3 children and then started a practice. And so by 2010, I was really exhausted after my 3rd child, and my immune system was shot. I was getting fevers every 3 weeks and needing naps every day. And just like Lisa's been so honest, it's kind of a personal road to recovery. Like you said, sometimes it's not like life can stop as you're recovering. You kind of have to learn how to do that in the midst of life. So it's been really a journey. So I'm very familiar with adrenal fatigue, and just want to talk to you about it. Has anybody heard of that before? Is that a term everyone's familiar with? Raise your hand if you're familiar with it.
From here. Yeah.
What'd you say?
From here.
Oh, from here. You heard it from here. Okay. Okay, great. So let's jump into some of the signs and symptoms. You can follow along. But in my practice, kind of the first sign of mild adrenal fatigue is kind of the afternoon crash. You eat at lunch and then you get tired. And often in the evening, there's kind of a second wind. You start getting a little bit wired, and everybody likes to sort of work on the computer at night and kind of crash in the day. That's kind of the early signs, and kind of a tired but wired feeling. And then mild to moderate signs. This isn't any particular, measurement. This is more what I see clinically. The fatigue starts to increase. And you can start to see food allergies and intolerances, allergies. The immune system starts to go off, and I'll explain why later. Joint pain is really common, like a kind of a fibromyalgia type-ish pain, where you kind of feel it in your shoulders and your hands and right around the glute. Trouble losing weight, especially around the belly. And some people actually have it in the back of the neck. Low blood pressure is really common, and one manifestation of that is when you stand up, you feel really lightheaded. Hormonal imbalances, like Lisa said, that can start to come into play. Blood sugar dysregulations, sometimes salt cravings, sensitivity to light, and like brain things, memory disturbance, depression. And then I put kind of severe as the next page, on the next slide. Exercise intolerance to me is a sign that your adrenals are not recovering very well. A lot of people feel good when you exercise. If you exercise and you feel bad, then your adrenals are probably going downhill. And inability to cope emotionally. And the reason is because, your adrenals put out cortisol, which helps you adapt and change to stressors. So you start to not cope well, you start to be less flexible, your routine, it needs to be a certain way or you don't feel okay. Your immune system starts to dysregulate. Like I said, I was getting sick all the time, but also autoimmune conditions is often adrenal fatigue is a component. And then some of the other things, insomnia, weakness. I put on a slide here by John Chintera, just a list of the most common presenting complaints of adrenal insufficiency. That was his list. I think I presented mine. That's what I see clinically. It's a little bit different than his. So what are the adrenals? They're little glands. They're little glands with big function. They sit on top of your kidneys, and they have kind of this outer layer, the cortex, and the inner layer, the medulla. And then I'll sort of go through and talk about them because it'll help you understand why you get those symptoms if you're experiencing any of them. So the cortex has 3 layers. One is the mineral layer. It regulates mineral balance, so which is the salt, which regulates blood pressure. And then the second layer is the glucocorticoids, the most famous one being cortisol. Is that some term you guys have heard, cortisol? Right. That's a lot in the news and stuff because it has so many functions. It's basically our stress hormone. It regulates glucose and fat metabolism, and it has effects on your immune system, inflammation, and affects your brain. And then that third layer of your adrenals and that outer layer is hormone production. It produces androgens, DHEA and androstenedione, which then convert into testosterone, estrogen. So you can see why now hormones can start to get affected if your adrenals are having problems. And then that middle layer is the adrenaline and noradrenaline that's secreted, also called epinephrine and norepinephrine. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the adrenaline rush. That's the adrenals secreting norepinephrine and epinephrine from that middle layer. And that regulates vasomotor tone and blood pressure and heart rate. So when you look at kind of the function of the adrenals and what it does, you can start to tie in some of the symptoms with the function of the adrenal gland. So that first layer, the outer layer, like I said, was the salt. It regulates minerals. So the more salt you have, the more salt your body retains, the higher your blood pressure. So if your adrenals are weak, you start having low blood pressure and salt cravings. The cortisol, that's that middle layer, and you start to see that explains, because I said cortisol regulates glucose and fat and the immune system inflammation, that's why you see that dysregulation on that whole level. And then the sex hormones, you'll see hormonal imbalances. So low libido, anybody, that's really common for people with adrenal fatigue, which kind of makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. If you are, you're geared to sort of run from the tiger under stress. So if your body perceives stress like a threat, you're not going to like stop and procreate. It's probably not the best time for your body, right? So that makes sense.
And I understand, like, your body can't differentiate between being chased by a tiger and your kids screaming and driving you crazy. Like, stress is stress.
Exactly.
Right? So it's that fight or flight response. We get that in our everyday life. So when you're constantly wired, your body's constantly having to adapt to the stress in your life. So it may seem normal to you, but your body is trying to regulate that. So it's working really hard behind the scenes to keep you, right, in that kind of balanced state. But at the whole time, you're burning yourself out.
That's a good point. Yeah, so the overall function of the adrenals is that fight or flight response to help us survive to stress. So low-grade chronic stress is definitely one of the main causes of adrenal fatigue. I did want to talk a little bit about cortisol, insulin, and weight, because you guys are part of this EAT program here. So I thought this was interesting that cortisol, basically, we still don't know why the mechanism is, but cortisol causes muscle wasting on the arms and the periphery, and it puts the fat around the belly. And as the fat goes on the belly, there's actually adipose tissue, like fat cells, have this enzyme, which, gosh, I don't like to pronounce, 11-beta-hydroxysteroid hydrogenase 1, which basically it converts cortisone, the inactive form of cortisol, into the active form cortisol. So the more enzyme you have, the more cortisol those fat cells see, and then the more they'll put it on the belly, and the more the enzyme is floating around, and then so you get kind of this vicious cycle. So that's very interesting. That's how cortisol plays into difficulty losing weight, because it kind of feeds themselves. The fat cells stimulate themselves. Glucocorticoids like cortisol also increase the expression of genes involved in fat deposition, so that it works together with insulin to sort of combat like all the hard work you're doing with your exercise and your weight. If you're stressed, then the cortisol and the insulin actually, is fighting you back on that. So that's why it's really important to manage the adrenals and cortisol as well, especially if you're trying to lose weight. And it increases insulin resistance, and I'm not sure that's I'm sure that you've heard that term, insulin resistance. That's basically when the receptors stop taking in the insulin, and now the body's producing more insulin to get the sugar in those cells, and the insulin tells your body to store fat. So cortisol enhances that insulin resistance. Cortisol also increases your appetite, and just out of interest, the current research is targeting that HSD enzyme, the one that I talked about. And HSD also increases with age, that enzyme that converts cortisone to cortisol. So now you know why a lot of women, as they get older, it's like fighting the belly fat. It seems impossible. Part of it is that enzyme. So causes of adrenal fatigue, I would say any sort of chronic low-grade stress, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, that's what's causing adrenal fatigue. And like she said, it can be so insidious. I have so many patients that I'll say, are you stressed? And they're like, oh, no, I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. But then you'll see all this evidence of it, and I'll dig a little bit further, and it's like, oh, well, I get triggered by that. And they have to keep their life in control so they don't get stressed. You know what I mean? Like everything, they don't like to lose control because everything has to be a certain way, and it's just evidence that you're sort of sitting on this chronic stress, right? The more inflexible, the more in control we need to be, you're sitting on something that's triggering you on an emotional level. So that's important to explore. Toxicity can also cause it. Insulin resistance can contribute to adrenal fatigue. Food allergies and getting your blood sugar dysregulated, that can cause adrenal fatigue because your body sees that as stressful. So if you're not eating, if your blood sugar drops, your body thinks you're in a fasting situation, and that's stressful for the body. Yeah. Okay, so testing. A lot of times I just use symptoms in my practice. Like if people have joint pain and they're tired after eating and they're wired and they have a food allergy or they have some sort of inflammation, I'm like, okay, it may not be the whole picture, but it's a piece. So a lot of the times I just use symptoms. At the office, we do have a salivary 4-point cortisol. You just kind of spit in tubes and you can check your cortisol level. It's supposed to have this nice pattern where it's highest in the morning and then it decreases. And sometimes you'll see people where it's just flatlined and then elevated at night, and it just totally matches their symptoms. They're exhausted all day and then they perk up at night. Part of that is that dysregulated cortisol production. And then as another option is this 24-hour urine. Some people consider that the gold standard. I don't think there's any gold standard yet for adrenal testing, really. In fact, in the medical community, I was just looking it up just for research, and they still poo-poo that this even exists, unless you have like Addison's or Cushing's, which is a medical diagnosis. They just sort of poo-poo adrenal fatigue even exists. So is there a gold standard for adrenal testing? Not really. But from a naturopathic perspective, a lot of naturopaths do use the 4-point salivary cortisol, and then you can also do urine testing on that. And the nice thing about the urine testing is you can also test some of these other hormones all at the same time, like estrogen and thyroid. And that's an important point I want to make as well, that low estrogen can also mimic cortisol effects on the body. So if you have low estrogen, that can cause brain fog, that can cause low libido. So sometimes that testing is nice to sort of piece out what's happening. I didn't write this on here too, but also thyroid and adrenals really go together as well. A lot of people think that if you have a thyroid issue, you've probably had hypoadrenal functioning for years before then. And so a lot of people think if you have a thyroid issue, you probably had adrenal issue. They really go together. They almost need to be treated together. And if you do have adrenal fatigue, you also want to rule out whether it's thyroid or not. Some people, you read this and go, oh, it's my adrenals, but really it's your thyroid off. So it's just important to get some testing and figure out what's going on.
What's the truth about thyroid testing though when you go to your doctor? Like I had my thyroid tested, right? Yes. And it fell in normal range. You're good, Lisa. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm not good. I'm not good. I don't feel good. Something's going on. But all the medical tests were telling me everything is good. Everything's good, right? Yeah. So, and even now with all the work I've done on my adrenals, I still have symptoms. So now I'm going to do the urine test that Nari was talking about, so I can go a little bit deeper and find out what else is going on with my hormone. But if I go to the doctor, I'm good to go. Yeah. So it's about listening to your body and trusting your instincts and not being afraid to dig a little bit deeper. But yeah, I'd like to know kind of what, right? Because thyroid is a slippery
Yeah.
Doctors don't like, when you come in and say, I think I got a thyroid issue, they get all like snotty about it, kind of. Yeah,
Right,
you're
right.
fine, you're good.
Right, it's
I
funny.
just wanted to ask about the urine test, because a few years ago I went to the women's, West Coast Women's
Yes,
Clinic,
they do that testing.
and, but the only place you could get it done was in Washington. Like I'd have to go to the States.
Oh, okay. Now you have the kit here, and they just send it there. Yeah, they send it to the same lab, but you get the kits here now.
Well, yeah,
They're available
I still
here.
had the kit, but I still had to go to the States.
It gets shipped to there.
Yeah.
Yep,
That's
same
still
thing.
the way it
Yep,
is.
it's the one lab.
Pretty costly.
It is expensive, yeah. That's why often I'll
Which
use.
can kind of put you into depression.
I often do use. That's why I often use symptoms. I don't often run that test just for adrenal testing. I usually run it when I'm kind of confused about the hormone picture and I want to see what's going on.
Yeah, this is an expensive test. I think it's what,
$360, I think, is what we charge at our office, and I think West Coast Women's charges $500. So.
I really want to know what's going on with my hormone profile.
Yeah.
So if my doctor's not going to check that for me, I want to know for me.
Right.
Because I'm not like, my hormones aren't going to suddenly, perk up like I was in my 20s. I kind of want to know what path I'm walking, so I'm just kind of looking at that as a cost. That's what my health.
Yeah.
It's my health. So
That's what it's interesting about the West Coast Women's Clinic, because it's doctors.
Yes.
But they're doctors that have bought in.
Right.
Like they're not.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was at a conference in San Diego a couple weeks ago, all talking about thyroid. These are like the alternative medical doctors that sort of got ousted by the conventional group, but these guys are very research-based. They had oodles and oodles of papers, lots of research showing why TSH isn't the best marker of thyroid, and really, and different ways that you should really be testing it. And you're starting to get into alternative medicine at that point in my mind. These people are not conventional. They're not treating the thyroid like conventional doctors. So yeah, there is research out there that TSH isn't the best test, and some doctors really feel you should be looking at symptoms and your basal body temperature, and that's something, we have to, probably better to see a professional about if you're confused about your thyroid picture. Like if you have all the signs and your doctor says you're good to go, probably at that point it's good to seek out somebody who's a little bit more familiar with, going beyond the TSH. Yeah. Okay, am I going too fast here? Okay, so diet. Let's talk about treatment a little bit, and because it's kind of a bit to talk about here. So the diet is really crucial. I think that's a big piece. I put on here the EAT program is definitely awesome, yay! Because, like I said, the key with the diet is to regulate your blood sugar. Those dips in blood sugar are stressful to your adrenals. So having adequate protein and healthy fat, that is what controls the spike in the blood sugar. Anytime you have something higher in glycemic profile, higher carbs, if you balance with protein and fat, healthy fat, it balances the blood sugar. I think Lisa explained a lot of that. Low glycemic carbs, minimize refined carbs and sugar. Salt is really important, especially if you have low blood pressure. I think people, heart disease is so prevalent, so everybody is on this uber low salt diet. That is not good if you have low blood pressure and your adrenals are shot. You need salt to recover from hypoadrenals functioning.
Yeah, and that was one thing I had to add back in, because I eat so healthy. I wasn't getting enough sodium. So
Yeah.
I had to start salting things.
Yeah.
I'm going, okay, I'm okay with the salt. It's weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And it's not like you're over salting. You just sort of bring it. A lot of people just are afraid of salt, and I'm just saying bring it up to palatability. Bring it up to good flavor. And especially if you use Celtic or sea salt, then you're getting the full range of minerals. You're not just getting NaCl like you're getting with the table salt. So that's better. Not skipping meals is really crucial. Minimize caffeine. I wrote this down because that's what the doctors say. Maximum 100 milligrams of caffeine. I personally say if your adrenal kind of shot, you should be staying away from caffeine altogether. I know that a lot of people are like, don't take away my coffee. and if you're in a mild state of adrenal fatigue, you probably can handle it. But the more severe you're at, you're just not going to recover, because the caffeine basically, in my mind, squeezes those adrenals. It's like whipping a horse. You'll eke out a little bit more energy, but then the payoff is the next day you feel really tired. I have so many clients that say, I just feel so much. I actually have more energy off the coffee. Maybe that immediate stimulus you don't get, but as a general whole, a lot of people feel better off of it.
Coffee's been the one thing. I still have my 1 cup a day, and if I don't, I have a headache, and that's the only reason I have a headache. I'm fairly addicted to it.
Yeah.
But even going beyond the coffee, when you think about all these energy drinks that are in the store
Oh,
right
yes,
now,
thank you.
Thank
you for saying that. Yes.
Right? So you think about us in our 30s and 40s burning out our bodies with the stress in our lives. Now go back in time and you started fat burners or energy burners when you were in your late teens, right? Because now college kids are using it to keep them awake, to study. And you carry that on in your 20s. You take a break to have kids, because you can't be on that stuff when you have kids. You start to gain weight. You come off. You've had your kids. You start with the fat burners again. The stress in your life now is compounded. And you literally, like, fry your system from the inside out. And then weight loss is like, it just can't be done, because you have to heal your body before you can even get it to cooperate with you again. So this is what our kids are facing. That's been my opinion for a long time. They're dangerous.
It is. It's interesting. I think I heard energy drinks are the fastest growing, you know, is that right?
And they market them to kids. You can get a Slurpee now, so now sugar jacked up.
Yeah.
And parents aren't recognizing this, so they're buying their kids, like, you know, those Monster or whatever. So now we've gone from Gatorade, which is bad enough, straight sugar, to Monster energy drinks. Holy crap.
The Chinese actually have an interesting perspective. I'm not sure if anyone knows traditional Chinese medicine, but they they don't talk about adrenals, but they talk about kidney function. And their perspective is that you have a certain amount of kidney energy, kidney essence, kidney jing, yin and yang, to last your lifetime. And that's all you got. And so it kind of makes sense when you read their symptoms of kidney deficiency. It looks like kind of an adrenal fatigue picture for people who have kidney deficiency in Chinese medicine. And if they think you only have a certain amount of juice to last your life and you're frying it with your energy drinks, you know, you gotta pace yourselves, especially in this like lifestyle. I think I talked to another naturopath who's been in practice a lot longer than me, and she said the last 8-10 years of her practice, she said she's never seen the kind of adrenal fatigue that she's seen. Like she's never seen it to this level. It's definitely, our world is going faster and faster.
Step around it.
Yeah, we fight it a little bit, right?
So I feel like crap, so I'll have more coffee, or I'm not losing weight, so I'm gonna exercise more, right? Like we keep turning up the volume instead of stepping back.
That's right.
Like nobody's recognizing that this is a really chronic problem, and I see it every day.
Right.
So I can teach you how to eat, but I can't force you to slow down your life. But as a coach, I know that slowing down your life is a key component in managing your weight and actually feeling better. That whole less is more thing that I talk about. Yeah, but you got to get there.
Absolutely. Okay, so lifestyle, like she talked about that is really, really key too. I mean, I can't say that you're going to recover from adrenal fatigue if your lifestyle is super fast-paced. No amount of supplement or pill is going to take over that. So what I heard is that, and I think this is really true, that basically your circadian rhythm, your routine, that's really important for setting your adrenals. They really like it when you wake up at the same time, you go to bed at the same time, you eat at the same time. And actually heard when you're raising your children to get their adrenals happy, it's actually really good to keep them on a routine. That's actually good for their adrenals. So limit physical activity or exercise to the morning or before 2 a.m. That's more for people who have exercise intolerance or who just have that energy in the morning. Unscheduled activity on the weekends, I think that's I heard that from another doctor for adrenal fatigue. I think that makes sense. That not that you have to do all this Tai Chi all day, but even if you just had like, you know, a day, like a weekend where you just didn't have to be committed to be somewhere at a certain time, you know, putting that in, setting boundaries, saying no, asking for help. I put those all in the same line. I think that's really hard for moms and women, right? Sleep is the best recovery, and I also put connection and community. I think that's all really important. I'll talk a little bit more about lifestyle on the last slide, but moving on, hormones, they all interplay together. I think you got that by now, right? The adrenals, insulin, none of that all mixes together. So you want to help your adrenals, you actually want to regulate your insulin, you want to regulate your thyroid, I said. Some people think the adrenal comes first before the thyroid drops out, but someone pointed out to me, a doctor pointed out that low thyroid is actually a stress to the body. So if you don't, then so maybe you should be treating your, you know, adrenals first and then your thyroid. Anyway, treat them together, because if your thyroid's low, it's stressful to your body, and your body will produce more cortisol. Regulate your progesterone. Some people, what happens is you get this cortisol steal. So the other thing that happens is cortisol has the same precursor, whether it's cortisol or progesterone. So a lot of people have symptoms of progesterone deficiency. If you have PMS, if you have cramps with periods, that's all, you know, signs of low progesterone, or at least a low progesterone to estrogen ratio. And some of that is because the cortisol is stealing all that precursor, you don't have any progesterone left. So symptoms of low progesterone, sometimes just giving the body progesterone, that can actually help the adrenals out a little bit.
Cortisol robs your body of
Progesterone. Yeah, it's the same precursor,
so
yeah.
the whole cortisol, too high cortisol, really just strips your body down of everything it needs.
Yeah, exactly.
It sends one domino over and then.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because, you know, the original theory is that, you know, at first your body compensates with all the stress and puts out too much cortisol, and then over time your adrenals decompensate and you have low cortisol. That's kind of what traditionally I was taught. But in clinic, I see kind of people have symptoms of both, low cortisol, high cortisol. I can see it both. So I don't think it's quite that linear. But all I can say, it goes off. It dysregulates is the best way to think about it. And you may need to replace your DHEA and your testosterone if it really is shot. Naturopathic support. So B vitamins are really good. Just stress Bs. I think a lot of people take them. B5 has kind of been researched for adrenal support. Lots of herbs. There's lots of herbal therapy out there, and I've listed ones that are really safe, that really anyone could really take, with perhaps the exception of Panax ginseng, because that's quite a hot herb. So if it's great, Panax ginseng is one that you want to take if you're generally cold, but if you generally run hot, you probably can't take Panax. Other than that, you could pretty much take any of those herbs on there. They're very safe. They don't interfere with any drug-herb interactions. They're generally safe. They're considered more like tonics in other cultures. So particularly like the black currant is on there, ribes nigrum, that's considered a tonic. A lot of people in Korea take ginseng all the time. And they're kind of like they kind of straddle medicine and food, kind of right in the middle. So I think they're very safe.
Ginseng is touted as because I had somebody ask, actually I think it was you, David. Yeah, it was David who asked me. He had a coach tell him to take ginseng because it would aid in weight loss. So it really comes back to ginseng, adjust your cortisol, you'll lose weight, right?
Yeah.
It's a pill, which you guys know there's more than that. But it's interesting. Watch if ginseng is the next go-to supplement for weight loss. Any of these.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that would make sense because of what it does with
cortisol.
cortisol.
If adrenal fatigue gets more and more play, and people start to become aware of it, you're going to see more remedies come out.
Yeah.
That's what cold effect says. It's ginseng.
Yeah, it's a different kind of ginseng. It's not Panax ginseng, but yeah, it's a different ginseng. Yeah. I had a lady stop me in the bathroom once. I can't remember how she knew it was a naturopath, but she stopped me and she's like, "You're a naturopath, I'm taking ginseng. My sex drive is through the roof." And I was like, "Thanks for that information." Yes, I know. I thought that was interesting. I'm like, okay, clearly, you know, now we know why, because it supports adrenals, which increases your androgens.
So what do you mean by your body running hot or cold?
Oh, so some people, your sense of temperature, yeah, like you're always the hot one, you have night sweats, you're always sweating, and in general, probably Panax isn't the herb for you. It's more for the people who are always kind of cold. Panax is better herb for that type. They'll have different nuances, you know. I won't go into it too much, but for example, like holy basil is more if you have a little bit more of the brain fog. And withania, ashwagandha, the other name for ashwagandha is withania. That one's a little bit more if you have sort of thyroid symptoms as well, or sleep issues. That one. Astragalus more for immune, if your adrenals are affecting your immune system. So they'll have, you know, a little bit of nuance of the herb.
So
but
the bottom line is, don't start self-medicating. Right? Like when I go see Nari, she sits down with me and she does some tests on me to figure out what's going to be best for my body,
Right.
and then we run with it for a little while. Do I feel better or worse? Do
Right.
we continue on with this treatment,
Yeah.
or do we switch directions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't self-medicate. Don't try and be your own best doctor. It never really works well.
However, if you really can't afford to see a naturopath, it wouldn't hurt to you know,
But
do
don't you
some
think
herbs. It's always better. You get
an
better
adrenal
care.
support complex, like a B complex, as opposed to individual things?
Either or.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not too opposed to people just taking rhodiola for a while. That's okay too. You know, you get better care if you see somebody who knows what they're doing, of course. But for some people, it's just out of their price range, and it doesn't mean you can't do it. You know what I mean? Like,
So is adrenal support, is that something for most women you would just give them some sort of adrenal support?
I would say almost everybody in my practice gets some sort of adrenal support, just because it affects the whole body on so many levels, right? And I'd say fatigue is like the #1 complaint, right? And everybody goes, my doctor says I'm fine, but I'm tired. Most likely
What's
it's...
the difference between adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue?
Oh, chronic fatigue is more of a... it's kind of a medical diagnosis. It's starting to get more accepted in the medical community, and that you have to fit a certain level of criteria with chronic fatigue. It's quite of a debilitating condition where you can't function, you're really tired, and people are trying to figure out exactly what it is. There's lots of research saying maybe it's related to virus, maybe it's related to different, people don't know exactly what causes it, but
if you're not taking care of yourself and you're getting this adrenal fatigue, could that kind of go down the slippery slope and you could get
chronic fatigue?
Like, are they in any way related?
I think everyone with chronic fatigue has a component of adrenal fatigue, but to me, chronic fatigue is a very multifactorial condition, and they have lots of things going on. Like, there's lots of dysregulation happening in their body, and I don't necessarily think adrenal fatigue leads to that. You could be in adrenal fatigue for years and not have chronic fatigue, for sure, but everyone with chronic fatigue has a component of adrenal fatigue. Vitamin A, chromium, vitamin C, zinc. That's Dr. Wright, who runs the Tacoma Clinic, which does that urine lab that you mentioned in the States. He really recommends those for adrenal support. Glandulars are also really popular, taking like actual gland of adrenal. Like, they have lots of supplements out there. So if you ever look at a supplement bottle that says adrenal extract and you're wondering why, it's because it's very popular in naturopathic medicine to take a bit of the gland to support the gland.
Where do you get that from?
Usually bovine, usually cow.
Yeah. Just curious.
Yeah. I put some other things on there. In our clinic, sometimes if people get really bad, we'll do IV vitamins. Sometimes that really can pull people out of an extreme fatigue. If people are like a 0 out of 10, and they're a mom and they just can't, that doesn't work for them, then sometimes doing IV vitamins helps. Or low dose cortisol. I have a few people who really that really changed their lives. I had one lady, she was on all these adrenal support, all these herbs. She was doing it for 2 years before she came to see me, and she was still so exhausted. And so I said, I just don't think that's cutting it. Let's go to a very low dose, physiological dose of cortisol, which is not without any side effects, but for some people that really makes a difference. She's like telling everybody it's changed her world. She can exercise 5 times a day or 5 times a week, and she wants to do it. So sometimes for some people that can really help them. And also an emotional level, like if you're not coping, sometimes that cortisol, that low dose cortisol makes a big difference. That's something you wouldn't treat yourself. That you'd have to see somebody for that. But just to let you know that there's lots of naturopathic tools out there. Theanine is one I didn't mention, but theanine has been taken from green tea, and that's really nice if the adrenal fatigue is manifesting more as anxiety, and you're not coping, and you're kind of stressed and wigging out. The theanine would be good for that. So see how, adrenals all have this different picture. So where seeing somebody professionally might help is if you're not sure, like, which one to take, because your manifestation may look like low libido or more look like anxiety, and you'd want to tailor it something a little bit more unique for you. And then I did put on the last thing, emotional balance. Gosh, a little bit more about that. I thought this was so interesting. I heard this at a talk, this adrenal thyroid ratio. They looked at it in different animals. So the adrenals are kind of that fight or flight gland, right? And so they looked at different animals, and the adrenal to thyroid gland ratio was the largest in the mouse and the chipmunk, and then the smallest in the mountain lion, alligator, and the human. So it was almost like the animals that didn't have any ability to protect themselves, like the little mouse and the little woodchuck, they're startled really easily. Their adrenals are massive; they're really big. Whereas like the alligator, it's got enough protection, and it doesn't need such a big adrenal gland compared to its other organs. And I thought it was interesting that humans are on there as well. Humans is the low adrenal thyroid ratio. So we're designed to be in control. We're designed to feel in control. And one thing that I do a lot in my practice is counseling. A lot about how just recognizing your choice in the world, that's one way to feel a lot in control. Like just recognizing you're choosing every aspect of your life, and as you start to retain more control of your life and all those little things. Remember I said a lot of people with the chronic fatigue, they're sitting on little balls of stress they don't even acknowledge. So that's where just sort of peeking in there and looking at it and being like, what area am I feeling that I don't have choice over? I have to do this, I'm feeling powerless in this area. That can be a huge area of stress. So I think that ties in with your sheet you just said, yeah.
So control, let's be clear here, the only thing you really have control over is yourself.
Yourself.
Right? You got to bring it back to here and not trying to control and manage.
Outside
if you're
world.
Trying to control and manage everything outside you, that's stress.
Very much so, because you're not really in control of anything out in the outside world, are you?
I was just thinking about the in control, because I know that's a kind of a buzzword that kind of takes me in a different direction. But like saying we're designed to be in control, like
Designed to control ourselves.
For me, it's like we're designed to be in balance, and it's because we're out of balance.
Yeah, but one thing that tips us out of balance is this lie that we tell ourselves that we need to control the outside world to feel okay. You know, but when really, when we recognize we can control our emotions, our thoughts, our attitudes, you know, whatever happens in the outside world, I can feel okay. That's what we're designed for. So we don't have to control the outside world. So I do a lot of that kind of counseling. I think that ties in nicely.
We full control and power over our emotions. That doesn't mean that we like them all the time, right? But if we're feeling, you can choose how you're going to sit with things. So, for instance, on Monday, I was just feeling sad. I was just sad. I was sad because I wanted to go to Whistler for a weekend, and I only got a day. Right? So then, instead of not just allowing myself to feel sad, well, Lisa, you should be grateful. So I pulled out the grateful card and slammed it down, right? Instead of just letting myself be sad, it didn't mean that I was ungrateful, but I could choose to sit in sadness. It didn't take me out. It was just there. I could choose how I wanted to work with the sadness. Fight it, try to make it go away, stuff it down, feed it, whatever it may be, right? But yeah, you do ultimately get to choose what you do with your thoughts and feelings. All of them. Yeah. So you can't control, like nobody makes you feel anything. You react however you're going to react to them, but then you get to own that piece of what you do with it.
Thanks, Lisa. Good point. Thanks, that's awesome. So also I was just going to write down some research on what does lower cortisol. They did find music therapy, massage, laughing, regular dancing. And what I tell my clients, this is what I tell my patients. A lot of people do this whole, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. I just tell myself, if you're in adrenal burnout, just ask yourself, what do you really want to be doing right now? If you just want to be sitting crocheting, that's what you got to be doing. You know, don't follow the list and be like, oh, I should be doing regular dancing. You know, if you don't like dancing, don't dance. You know, just do whatever you really want to be doing.
Back to, you know, a big thing that's come up for me lately is play. What do I do to play?
Exactly.
I love my work. So quite often my work feels like play, but it's not. It's still work. There's an intent behind it. There's a purpose. There's an intensity. Play has no purpose other than playing. And, you know, I think that that's what I really loved about being up in Whistler. It was like, wow, I really haven't played for a long time. And that used to be a really big part of my, you know, unknowingly, that was my stress management. And somewhere along the line, I gave that up for all the doing, right? I should be doing. So that point around on the weekend, having that time where you just go, yeah, I don't have anything planned. Like that still feels weird for me when I have nothing on the agenda. But the truth is, I want my kids growing up that way. I want them to have nothing days. Because it's important that my kids grow up not in this state of always doing and scheduled, and now we're off to this activity, and now we're going here, and you got to do, you know, X, Y, and Z. I want them to grow up more balanced, with a more balanced lifestyle. So that means helping them slow down now and not buying into that, you know, you got to do a gazillion things, right? And making sure that play is an important part, not just for me, but for the family as well. So those vacations that, you know, when you play, oh, we can't afford to get away, we shouldn't do this. They're not really optional in your life. You got to find a way to get out and play, even if it's, you know, you're going camping and it's minimal expense. You have to find a way to play. That's really important for your self-care. Mm-hmm. Like we're all supposed to enjoy life, right? It's not always supposed to be about intensity.
Yeah. Okay, last things. I did put on there EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. I'm not sure if I've ever talked to you about that, but that's
I think I'm aware of it though.
Oh, okay. It's tapping. Yeah, you tap on acupuncture points. It's a great tool. I just tell, sometimes I run out of time at the patient visit to like go through it all, and I'm just like, just Google it, just YouTube it. It's really cool. You just tap on acupuncture points. So it's a little tool if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling out of control, whatever. You just tap on these acupuncture points and these same 9 acupuncture points, and you'll feel your body shift. It's amazing. And then lastly, I just want to talk about a case report quickly, just a case study. I just had a lady come in 2 weeks ago. I just thought I'd talk about her because I saw her yesterday, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Because she came 2 weeks ago, you know, crying, and I took her history and I said, oh, what are you eating? She's like, well, I'm not eating breakfast. And I said, what are you eating for lunch? She's like, well, not that much. I said, what are you eating for snacks? Nothing really. And I said, okay. And so, you know, I said, and she has 2 children. And I said, well, you know, what are you doing when your kids are eating? She's like, I'm cleaning. And then I said, well, what happens when you, yeah, like, why don't you sit and eat with them? She's like, yeah, I don't know. One time I did that and my children said, oh, you're eating with us today, Mommy. And I was like, okay, I think it's time to start, you know, taking care of yourself. And she was crying, and I call this like overwhelmed mommy syndrome, you know, like young children, they're just crying. I'm like, okay, I think you need more support. You need to get on some dates. You need to like, you know, hire somebody. And I said, do you have somebody to help clean the house? She said, well, I got rid of them because I thought I could do it myself. And I was like, you know what I mean? Just the story. You're like, oh my goodness, you're not taking care of yourself. So we just put in some basic things. We did some acupuncture. I think I gave her some homeopathics. I tested her, some energy remedies came up. And the next week she was like, oh, I feel a lot calmer. I'm still crying a lot though. So she was crying in my office as I was doing acupuncture on her. And it turned out she kind of had this stigma about, she said in the Chinese community, that to have a mental illness like depression is like something's wrong with you. And so she didn't want to acknowledge that she was feeling like that. And she was just kind of scared of the word like depression. I was like, okay, so you have depression. The point is, why do you have it? I think you're burnt out. And this is, you know, just put these things in place, do the steps, you know, get some help, ask for more support. And those lifestyle changes were really the key, because I just saw her yesterday and she was like, I haven't cried all week. And she said, my children don't say what's wrong with you, why are you eating with me this time? And she was just, it was just so remarkable. She said, my energy, she said, did those little energy remedies you give me, like, did that improve energy? I'm like, no, not really. They sort of help balance your nervous system. But it was just all the lifestyle changes that she had done. And so I just thought that was really cool. In like 2 weeks, just making this adjustment, saying it's okay, give yourself permission to take care of yourself, ask for help. She said her friends were calling her because she started to actually tell some friends that she was feeling that way. And then her friends were checking up on her every day. She's like, I'm getting a facial, I feel guilty. And so we had a little chat about that, about how not to feel guilty. But anyway, I said, so how do you feel when you come back after taking care of yourself? She's like, oh, I feel so good. I want to play with my kids rather than avoid them. So I was like, make that link for yourself. Make the link that when you take care of yourself, you're a better mom and your kids like to see you, rather than just feeling guilty that you're taking time for yourself. So I thought that was just cool, because I saw her yesterday and I was like, so just to put it together, you know, it's not just like take this or that, but sometimes it's really like looking at your life, like how are you doing it for you? And I thought that was cool. In 2 weeks, she just felt so much better. So
it all comes back to self-care, right? If you move away from your self-care, you'll start to feel like crap. So if eating healthy is, and I consider this like the very basics of self-care, if you let this go, everything else will start to go. If you keep that self-care going at whatever level it needs to be for you, and it's always changing. Like what I need for self-care is constantly changing, but my nutrition is always the foundation of it.
yeah.
It's always the foundation. I know if I eat well, I'm going to feel more emotionally stable and more ready to take on whatever comes at me. And if you're not eating well, I mean, you guys have experienced that now, right? It doesn't feel good. You feel like you're losing your mind if you eat poorly for a couple of days, right? It's not a good feeling. And that's how most of you are feeling when you came in here. So yeah, self-care.
Yeah.
It's not selfish to take care of yourself. That's the most selfless thing you can do, because it impacts everybody in your family.
It's true, and it inspires others. Inspires other people to do the same.
Yeah, and when you're standing in your own stuff, you can't see it. So sometimes it takes somebody else saying to you, hey, do you realize you're moving at the speed of light? Because you're moving so fast, you don't even know how chaotic your life is. Right, so part of this class was about helping you guys get honest with yourself, not just about your food, but about your lives. Like, I hope you've opened up your eyes to really what's going on in your world and the things that need to change, right? When I talk about putting down things so you can pick up other things, this is what it's about.
Oh, and quickly about treatment, how long you should be on it. A lot of people are surprised that they're not feeling better right away. So I tell people, if you're in adrenal fatigue, at least expect 3 to 6 months to recover. And if it's pretty bad, it could take, 8 months to a couple years even. So I don't know. I haven't seen you frequently, right? So I don't know.
How long did
I think I saw you last year.
Yeah, it's been a year.
It's been
so
a
I mean,
year.
I definitely feel much better, but I'm not ready to come off my adrenal support, because obviously there's other stuff still coming out for me, and I don't feel, if I stay up too late one night or a couple days in a row, I go back to that feeling dizzy and not well and can't get out of bed, and like just, it's not good. So it's still very much I'm very conscious of how my body's feeling still. It's not back 100%.
Right.
I have to watch how much I exercise. Everything's a very fine line for me still. I don't take it for granted. But it took me, I don't know how many years to burn myself out, like starting at the age of God knows what, you know, and I just turned 41. I don't think that, you know, 30 years, 25 years of crazy life is going to correct itself in 12 months. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, lots of nurturing over a long period of time.
Right.
With
Well,
support.
yeah, and just the fact you guys are in here is a really good sign. You know, people that you've told about the program and they don't sign up, you know? It's like there's some resistance to a lot of people, a lot of us have, to sort of taking care of ourselves. And one of the way that manifests is even just like, you know, signing up and doing something for yourself. You know?
Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Ask anything you want.
I just want to make a statement about the case study you were talking about, the woman that was feeling depressed, and after a couple of weeks, she was feeling much better.
Yeah.
You know, I just wouldn't want people to go away who are dealing with clinical depression to think that it's the be-all and end-all.
Oh
Like,
gosh, no.
You know, there's clinical depression that
That's different. That's different than, you know, a depression due to burnout. Yeah.
And it's like when you're in it, how do you know what the difference is?
I think that's why we have professionals to go to, right? Like, you know, I think a lot of people try and do things themselves, and I said to my patient this today, actually, like, you know, you may not be able to figure this out on your own, you know? Part of it is listening to your body and figuring it out, but sometimes we need other people that's all they do is study it. I think you're right, that's a big distinction. Not everybody with depression has just adrenals. Clinical depression is very complex too, right? It's different than, I'm talking about adrenal fatigue, and that can lead to depression, but that's not the only reason why people have depression.
No judgment on it, right? Like everybody's journey is very unique to them and to their circumstance. So, you know, there's people that are clinically depressed. There are people that, you know, I've got clients that have to take meds for their depression. They're never coming off of those, right? It's not about judging what's right or wrong. It's about accepting that each of us have our own unique path. Listen to your body, trust your gut, surround yourself with people that support you and are going to nurture what you're trying to do for yourself. Take responsibility for yourself. It always comes back to that. Take responsibility for yourself. So what things do you have control over that you can do? Even if it's going to bed at the same time every night, which can be a really hard thing, right? Like, I have to be in bed between 10 and 11. Like, that's my mantra. I have clients that text me now, okay, I'm in bed. So we're all going to bed. They just need that accountability to say, I've gone to bed. Because that's part of adrenal fatigue, right? 10 o'clock, they get on the computer, and it's like 2 a.m. and they're still in it because they got that second wind. And I know that. I don't want to go to bed. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. So, yeah, and taking responsibility for the things that you know, you put in your body, the type of food you're eating, how much caffeine you're putting in. So yeah, and trusting your gut. If you don't know you have clinical depression or you're concerned about the level of your depression, going in and talking to somebody about it, being honest, and letting other people be your eyes into windows that you may not be able to, that you may not see into. Right? Yeah, everybody is different, and it's nobody else can choose what's best for us. We all ultimately know what's best for us. Any other questions?
When you are a mom who works and has 2 small children, there's some point where you're tired. What level of you're not ever gonna be like, do you know what I mean? Like you're gonna be tired at some point.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Totally. Yep.
I don't know how to phrase the question.
Yeah.
So how do you know, when you have small children, they require care that you have to do, and things have to get done before school and stuff like that. How do you know, I mean, things are going to be tiring. How do you know at what point that's too tired, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
That's my question.
How do you know if you're too tired? What does that mean to you? What do you mean by that?
That's what
Like how much is a normal amount of tired?
Yeah, not a normal. That sounds really ridiculous.
No. I mean, no, it's a good question.
But you know, you're never going to feel like you have energy 100% of the time, right? So...
Yeah, I mean, there's certain phases of life where you are in survival mode, right? Like if you are taking care of aging parents and somebody's dying and you just got diagnosed, you're not going to be like, oh, I got to listen to my body. You know, sometimes you're you're in survival mode, and that's when you use it. The point is that there's going to be a time in your life you can recover. Yeah, and take that time to listen to your body and recover. There are times in your life you're going to be in survival mode, and I don't know what to say about that other than take lots of naturopathic support. And sometimes you will have to actually like hire somebody for a period of time, even if it means dipping into savings. And it just depends on your level of adrenal fatigue. Like if you're not coping, you have to make changes regardless of whether it seems feasible or not. But if you're coping and you're tired and you feel okay about it, then yeah, just take a little bit of the adrenal support and time will, your kids will grow up eventually,
I'm a health professional also, but I hear a lot of people come and saying, I'm so tired, and I went to my doctor, and they're like, oh, those are symptoms of being a mom, like, or, kind of that's the response, and I don't know if that's just, it's a different issue that women's concerns aren't as well researched as some other concerns.
Doctor gave me the
But
same
I get
stuff.
that from people, that's a symptom of being a mom with two small kids, right? So when is that not a symptom? When is that a symptom of something more? And I know you went over some of those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you ever, like, I have a mommy friend who's always tired, and I'm like, oh, what time are you going to bed? She's like, oh, it's my own fault. I was up till midnight. And it's like, we could, sometimes we could do little tweaks where it's like, oh, I'll indulge in the sugar and then I'm up on caffeine. Sometimes we sabotage ourselves a little bit, and understandably, because it feels good. You're tired and you finally want to treat yourself. I understand that. But sometimes we pretend that we can't do anything about it when sometimes we can. And other times you need to enlist more support. Like sometimes you just cannot do everything on your own, and it's time to hire somebody, ask for help. Like sometimes, like no one's gonna take care of you but you, and sometimes you just gotta make the changes.
For me it came down to, I didn't want to feel tired all the time, and I wasn't okay with the doctor saying that everything was okay. It wasn't okay with me. Something was wrong, something was off. So I didn't know if it was a low level depression or you know what I mean? I just knew it wasn't about just being a mom, because I couldn't get out of bed some days. And I'm like, I eat healthy, I exercise, like this isn't normal. So yeah, first step, like Dr. Pidutti said, is take a step back and be responsible. So could you go to bed earlier? Could you be eating better? Are you doing all the things you can do for you? And when that still doesn't work and you're still tired all the time and you're looking at the list of symptoms going, oh, this might sound like me, it's certainly not going to hurt you to support your adrenals.
Yeah. And then for some people, there's like a little line we won't cross, It's like you're having trouble in your marriage. It's like, oh, but I'm not going to go counseling. We're not that bad, Some people don't let themselves sort of go, well, what if you just needed to do that? What if you just needed to...
I was just going to say, maybe a lot of it is about us feeling like we're, for some reason, we can't ask for help.
Yes.
And somehow that's a weakness.
Totally.
To ask for help.
Right.
And maybe sometimes the adrenal support you need is saying, I need help.
Totally. I know. I have so many patients. I had just a patient yesterday who said the same thing. She's like, I'm realizing my body has limitations. And she saw that as a weakness, and she's like, I'm starting to accept that my physical body has limitations, and I'm okay with that. And it was this huge aha for her, and yeah, you're right. Some people see that as unacceptable. Suck it up, move on. And then, okay, there's times not to indulge in your pity party, but there's times when you're actually hitting your real physical limitations. Our bodies are not, they can't often keep up with what our brain wants them to. That's just...
We're designed for connection and community. We're not designed to be solo.
Yeah.
We're better when we ask for help, right? Like, I consider myself a pretty good coach, but I got a lot of coaches, right? You would think I'd be able to coach myself, but I can't. Like, it just doesn't work. I get so much further ahead when I ask for help, but it took me a long time to learn that wasn't a sign of weakness, that I didn't have to carry around this, I got this shield all the time.
Right.
Because that was really what was taking me out in my life.
Right.
I was buying into that supermom premise.
Yes.
I can have business, I can have body, I can have a husband, I can have the kids, I can do it all and not die. And it almost killed me. It really almost killed me.
Right.
I almost lost my health because of it. It was a really big deal. So yeah, ask for help. There's way more strength in asking for help than there is in not.
Yeah. As my husband always says, Tiger Woods has a coach. Tiger Woods has a coach. What's that? Yeah, exactly.
It's 20 to 8, so anybody who has to go can go.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, everybody.